Welcome to Frasier on Film, the Frasier TV show podcast with a twist. Each episode of the podcast visits each episode of Frasier across its 11-series run. But our main focus isn't on the good doctor himself. No. It's going to be one of the guest appearances on the show that week. That could be one of the many A-listers who called into Frasier's KACL radio show, or just someone who made a fleeting appearance at Cafe Nervosa. We'll delve into that actor's backstory, look over their cinematic offerings, and deep dive into one movie specifically. By the end, we'll see if we can make a connection between their character in Frasier and their character in the film we've just talked about. So you'll be hearing about icons and wash-ups, legends and starlets, sherry drinkers and beer guzzlers, blockbusters and B-movies. It's going to be an education in it all. But what if you don't really watch Frasier? That's fine, you'll probably know the actors we're talking about. And if you don't really know the actors we're talking about, then that's fine too. You'll know the movies. So whether you're a fan of Frasier or you're a fan of film, this is the podcast for you. So, pull up your favourite bar stool at McGinty's and tell the wine club you'll be running late, because this is Frasier on Film, and I'm your host, Ben Murray, and you're listening. What if Frasier carried the ring to Mordor? Fly, you fools, or don't! Come back, because we've got a podcast to record and for you to listen to. Hello and welcome, because this is Season 1, Episode 13 of Frasier on Film and of Frasier itself. Today's episode is Guess Who's Coming to Breakfast, and guess who's coming to guest with us? It's one half of a dynamic duo which many of you will know. They've been on an epic quest together, battling all sorts of unpleasantness along the way, and fortunately they made the journey in one piece, and they come to us live from Austin, Texas. Now you may think I'm talking about Elijah Wood. I'm not. It's of course Julio from the Contrarians podcast. Welcome, Julio, to Frasier on Film.
Thank you for having me. I had not made the Elijah Austin connection, even though I knew about it. I have a friend who was at some concert, some show, and apparently they were moshing right next to Elijah Wood years and years ago. I don't know if Elijah Wood still moshes, but back then he was, and they were not very impressed with his
Elijah
mosh
moves.
Moshing. Yeah, I guess he's
what a shame. He's a music guy. We'll come to it. He's a big music guy, so that doesn't surprise me.
That it makes sense. I mean, to live in the self-proclaimed, I guess, live music capital of the world, as they call Austin, Texas.
Do they now? That's a very self-important title that you've bestowed upon yourselves over there.
You land at the Austin airport. There's a gigantic guitar, and live music capital of the world.
What's the concert, like an open-air concert there? Austin Lights or something like that?
So there's Austin City Limits, which is it's 2 weekends now. It used to be 1 weekend. Now it's 2 weekends, consecutive. And you have bands playing, and it's pretty awesome when you're young. As you get older, you might be like, I don't have the patience to.
We're still young, Julio.
You are, yeah. And I've heard your stories of you going to, what is that place that you go to?
Glastonbury?
Yes, yeah. It's like, to be that young and have that energy. The last time I went to ACL, I think the big headliner that I was going there for was... what's that band that made the soundtrack for Where the Wild Things Are?
Mogwai?
No. I think their big song was Wake Up. I'm sure they're still playing. But anyway, they were the big headliners. And I was waiting for them, with the big crowd and for hours. And I remember thinking, they came out. I'm like, this was awesome. This was worth it. I don't know that I have it in me anymore. This might be the last one.
Understandable. Listen, I'm feeling it. I'm about to turn 40 next year, and increasingly the seats look more attractive than the standing tickets when I book.
Yeah, I can relate.
That's the way it is. Listen, a lot of the audience will know you, Julio, of course. We've got a lot of mutual fans, mutual friends. We've known each other. We've been on each other's previous podcast. Not your previous podcast, but my previous podcast. Previous podcast, like it's dead. It's not. Filmbusters is still going.
Your other podcast.
The other podcast. But there will be some people listening to this who are not aware of the Contrarians. Apart from a ringing endorsement from me, what can you tell us about the Contrarians podcast?
The Contrarians podcast is a movie podcast. There's lots of those. Our gimmick is that we look at the Rotten Tomatoes score for every movie that we do, and we argue against it. So Rotten Tomatoes likes to categorize movies in two different ways, fresh and rotten. So if a movie's fresh, we argue against that. We treat it as if it was a bad movie. We recap it, pointing out all the bad things about it, all the loopholes or the silly stuff, all the missteps. And if a movie's rotten, then we praise it. We treat it as if it was a masterpiece, and we tell you about everything that the critics are missing. We try to be funny about it. It's not just us being self-important. It's just funny to argue against like what they call the consensus on Rotten Tomatoes. And then on the second half of the show, we tell you how we really feel, which sometimes aligns with the performance we're giving in Contrarians Corner or not, like the first half. It's been fun. We just did, we've done 10 years of Contrarians. We just celebrated that in October. And we've discovered a lot of movies that we wouldn't have watched if we were not doing the show. We've revisited and reconsidered our opinions on movies that we thought we loved or we thought we hated. And, it forces you to look at things through a different lens than when you're just sitting down and watching a movie, because you're forcing yourself to be extra positive or extra negative about it. And it's been fun. It's just me and Alex talking about movies and fostering conversation, not just between us, but between the people that listen to us, which, have increasingly become more vocal about our opinions. So that's always fun. But it's just me talking with my friend about movies. And,
at the end of the day, isn't that why we're all doing this? It's a beautiful thing.
It's just connecting with people that either share our opinions or don't. But I think that if I want to get more philosophical or more profound about it, it's just that when you look at a Rotten Tomatoes score, it simplifies the discussion about a movie, because it's just very binary. It's very black and white. It's rotten or fresh. And then when you're talking about it, you actually get to see the shades of gray. It may still be a movie that you don't want to watch, but at least now you know why, instead of looking at a green splotch or a fresh tomato and just reading a few quotes from the reviews.
It's a very I obviously love it, but the unique thing that you guys do, which I would really struggle with, is finding that opposite point of view to your own, because whether or not you're being contrarian or not, you are disagreeing with yourself at one point in the episode, right? For the most part, unless you do think something is fresh when it's rotten, and then you get to just talk fresh all the way through. But to see the opposite side of something which you staunchly believe in is a hard thing to do in life. For a podcast and for a film podcast, you've got to force yourself to find the positives in things you might not otherwise find. But you guys do it with great humor, which is what makes it interesting.
I think that's the key. I mean, I don't want to be the guy that calls himself funny, but I think that Alex is funny, and together we're funny. You're
a great double act.
But that helps. I mean, that's why I don't know that I could do the show, and I don't know that I want to listen to a show where we do that thing, but we're taking it seriously. And we're trying to make you laugh. And I think that hopefully most people, when they listen, they can tell when we're being exaggerated just for the sake of comedy, instead of because we really believe certain things. So, it's very much, I'll tell you this, very different from your show. One, in length, is your episodes, man, you get through this so quickly. I'm in awe.
Yeah, maybe not today, but yeah.
Yes. It also, you do a lot of research, which is, it's a different kind of show, and it's a show, the type of show that we don't do, because I think that a lot of what I like about doing the show is that we come into it very fresh, and whatever we learn, mostly we learn as we're discussing it. Because I think that that's how most people watch movies. You sit down and you watch a movie, you don't do a ton of research before you sit down the movie and you appreciate it. And so a lot of what the show does for us, definitely for me, is just working through my experience watching something for the first time or rewatching it after a long time. And I don't want other reviews or trivia or whatever getting in the way of it. So I don't get to do what you do, which is like you dig deep into like the filmographies and the backgrounds and all that stuff, which I think it's great. It's, as a listener, it's a lot of fun because you're providing a lot of information that that helps enhances experience. And then I don't think we've done, counting like bonuses on Patreon or whatever, we've probably done over 300 movies. I don't think we've covered a Kelsey Grammer movie. I can't think of one.
Surely, I thought not one of the X-Men films. No,
we haven't. Alex did on Patreon.
He's in X-Men films, right? Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Am I right?
Beast.
Okay.
Yes, he's in one.
Right.
We've referenced it. I think that whenever if Kelsey Grammer ever comes up, we don't call him Frasier. We reference Beast from the X-Men.
Of course, yeah.
Alex watched all the X-Men movies for Patreon like a while ago, and he talked about them for like 15-20 minutes. So we've touched on it, but no, he has a movie career.
Oh yeah, he does. I've got to say something right here, because here is a mutual connection between us. You have a huge admiration. One of your top 10 films of all time is Big Fish, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So I've mentioned this in passing to you. This is my literal Frasier connection, and what connects us is I saw him do it in a really tiny theatre in London about 6-7 years ago. Was it a musical?
It was a musical. If it's the one I'm thinking of, because John August, the guy that wrote the movie, like adapted the book into the movie, he also adapted into the Broadway show that
right
was
so,
here.
It was a musical. I just can't remember any of the songs. I'll be honest with you, the whole show as a whole was a little underwhelming, but Kelsey Grammer has this overwhelming effect on me, which is when he starts playing the emotional heartstrings, I weep like a baby. On Frasier, many times. So when it got to a particular point, which I don't want to spoil for anyone who hasn't seen the film, it gets to a particular poignant moment, which I know that you have an emotional reaction to as well, because I've heard you talk about it in the film. But it's Kelsey Grammer on stage 5 feet from me doing it. I've never bitten the inside of my cheek and drawn blood intentionally before, but I did it because I would have, heaving loud sobs. That was in me. Tears were streaming down my face. The lights are off, which was a blessing. But I'm like, I'm going to blurt out this noise in a moment unless I hurt myself to hold this back. And that is the power of Kelsey Grammer and why I love Frasier so much. And that goes to answering a question that you brought up before we started recording. But I just wanted to mention that here because you were talking about the Kelsey Grammer film career.
I just remembered we have had Kelsey Grammer in a cameo in a movie. Probably not something...
Expendables?
No, we haven't done the Expendables. Is he in the Expendables? No, he's in the Entourage movie.
Expendables 3, I think.
Well, Entourage movie, he shows up for, 30 seconds.
Is it a Frasier gag?
No, it's a he plays himself.
Okay.
Jeremy Piven, I think, is going in to see his therapist, and Kelsey Grammer is coming out of the office of the therapist, and he's like, "Hey, Kelsey, blah blah blah," and I think Kelsey Grammer tells him, "Go fuck yourself," and he keeps walking.
Well, that's kind of a meta Frasier gag. He's coming out of the therapist,
Yeah, I guess so. You're right.
That's a tenuous Crane connection. Listen, we could talk about this sort of stuff all day, but we got a show to get on with, Julio. So everyone go and check out Contrarians. First and foremost, that's the main point. If you take anything from today's episode, it's that. Go and listen to them. They're great. They're amazing. I love them. But coming back to Frasier on film, Julio, I approached you about coming on the show. I gave you a list of all of the different guest actors which I'd selected from season 1, and you picked Elijah Wood. Because I didn't suggest any film. I just said pick an actor. You picked Elijah Wood. Is that because you have any particular interest in him, or did you want to speak about the film that you picked for today in particular, which is Everything Is Illuminated?
I'm pretty sure the movie came after I picked the actor, and I picked the actor because out of the list that you sent me, Elijah Wood was the name I was probably one of the names I was most familiar with. There are a couple of big names that you have on that list that I probably could have, picked a bunch of movies from a wide range of movies I'm not familiar with. But Elijah Wood kind of jumped at me. I knew that I wanted to try to do a movie that neither of us had seen.
Yeah.
And he seemed like the right choice. Elijah Wood is somebody that I'm very well aware of, but then looking through his filmography, I don't think I've seen most of his movies.
No, I mean that is true. He's so in our consciousness, obviously, whether you like it or not, because of Lord of the Rings. It feels
Exactly.
like we should know everything that he's done. But as you say, there's a whole filmography out there, a lot of stuff that we won't have seen. And I think, well, we'll get to it, but I think a lot of very independent, offbeat films that he might not otherwise have done, were it not for the fame that he garnered from Lord of the Rings. Let's go into the first section, Julio. For those who are unfamiliar with mine and Julio's dynamic, can go one of two ways on things. Julio and I are often vastly opposite ends of the spectrum on films. I am the Frasier loving guy, and Julio is a huge fan of the Marvel universe. I don't think I've ever had to speak about the Marvel
Those
universe
are the two
on this
extremes,
podcast.
right?
Yes.
It's like superheroes on one end, Frasier on the other.
Exactly. And you fall into one camp or the other. You pick your side and that's it. So it's hard to say if we're going to be on the same page about anything that we talk about today, but we'll have a good time do it. So let's get to the pressing business at hand. We need to visit the Crane household and discover what uncomfortable situation awaits Frasier or Martin this week.
So, it's a pleasure to meet you, Elaine. Yes, I know that Dad's wanted to have you for a long time. I mean, for dinner.
Yes. Well, I certainly enjoyed it. But, Martin, I really should be going.
Oh, no. You should at least stay for breakfast, shouldn't you?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Well,
Splendid idea.
I guess I could stay for coffee.
Oh, splendid. So what did you two kids do last night? You play some games? Board games. Not that you were bored or excited. Well, not that I'd know anything or should, but warm buns, Elaine. No, not yours. Ours. Here, to eat, you see. Here, I'll have one.
Episode title, Guess Who's Coming to Breakfast? Air date, 6th of January, 1994. Writer, Molly Newman. Director, Andy Ackerman. All right, first things first, Julio. Frasier. I understand you only watched your first couple of episodes of Frasier yesterday, having never seen it before. Is that true? What's your awareness of Frasier? What is your relationship to it?
So I'm aware of it as a pop culture thing, for one. I know it was huge. I guess it's still huge. I've seen probably altogether about 2 seasons, 2.5 of Cheers. Mm-hmm. Some of those had Frasier pop up here and there. So I know he was Shelley Long's fiance, I think, at some point.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
Were they engaged?
Yeah. And then she was with Sam.
Right.
And then she was with Sam, then she was with Frasier, and then she was with Sam again.
Oh, see, I didn't realize that he was in the middle. I thought that he was first, and then Sam, and then Kirstie came in.
Sam first, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how any of those stories end. I just know, much like with Frasier, like most of my Cheers awareness is because I know that at some point Coach dies and then Woody replaces him, but I haven't seen those episodes, I just know because I think most people know. And same thing with Kirstie, Shelley Long, all that stuff. So I knew that at some point Frasier spun off into his own thing. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest with you, Ben, here's our first disagreement. I couldn't believe that out of all the characters in Cheers, he's the one that got a spin-off.
I don't think anyone could at the time. Right. At the time, I don't think anybody could, because
Clearly
he was introduced as this fairly dour character who hung around the bar. He was the intellectual while everyone else was the common man. It's like, why would we make a comedy about this guy out of all of them?
Not being a Cheers expert, I don't know how much of the humor translates. Like when I don't know if you watch Frasier, you're like, well, of course you would like Frasier because you like Cheers, and it's basically the same thing, only it's different characters. But it's kind of like when you watch a show from the guys that did Parks and Rec and The Good Place, you're like, oh, it's a show from those guys, so you will enjoy it. I don't know, but I finally sat down and watched I think it's episode 7, the first one I watched. Couple days ago.
Call Me Irresponsible?
Is that the one with the he tells a dude that to break
up with his girlfriend,
and then he starts dating the girlfriend.
Right.
Loved it. It was really funny.
Good.
It was random because I went to bed and I was like, I'm gonna fall asleep watching Frasier. Mm-hmm. And of course, I fell asleep within like 2 minutes. I get the opening and then I fell asleep. So with the pilot, I woke up and I was like, well, I need to watch Frasier. So the episode that was starting was 7. So I watched 7 and then I jumped to 13, which is the one that we're doing now.
Cool. So this is interesting then, because we'll talk about the actual episode in a second. But did you then feel anything that you were watching in this episode you weren't quite getting the gag, or you were missing a hell of a lot of context? I mean, it's a sitcom, so you can normally watch anything, but did it feel like something was missing because you didn't have that connective tissue of the early episodes?
No, not a whole lot. I think I'm a little iffy on the Daphne character, but not a whole lot. Like, I know, even, again, I am pretty sure that down the line she hooks up with Niles.
Yeah, she does.
Just based on, again, pop culture awareness.
Yeah.
I mean, I've listened to your recaps of the first 4 episodes, because as we record, those are the 4 that have been published. So I know, like, a little bit of the dynamics.
Yeah.
I think the character of Daphne was the one that I wasn't, like, sure about, just because maybe she's not as discussed as Niles and Martin and Frasier.
Yeah.
So I think that with them, even before watching the show, I kind of knew their personalities, and I knew. And with Daphne, I was like, is she really smart? Is she supposed to be an airhead? Does she like anybody here, or is she just really nice? At the end of this episode that we're covering, there's a moment where it's like, are they flirting? Is the show hinting at something between them? So that was the one time where I felt like I didn't know, where I felt like pop culture had failed me, and I wasn't prepared for the Daphne character.
Well, that particular moment at the end of the show, it's the one and only time in Frasier history where there is even a hint of a romantic connection between the two. Any interest in Frasier. So I think immediately after that, the writers were told, you need to drop that. That's going nowhere. We're not doing that again. So it's right that you would feel a little bit lost with that moment. Daphne's always been the eccentric. Her gag at this point is she's like British Mary Poppins. She's a psychic. She can tell when things are going on. And again, at that moment when she gets with Niles seasons down the line, that dynamic goes a little bit. She becomes a bit sterner. And actually recently, when I was doing a recent rewatch, in the last season or 2 of Frasier, she's a hell of a lot sterner, to the point where people say she's actually unlikable. Something that I think a lot of people said about Monica in Friends at a certain point. Yeah. She went from being sort of pixie manic to just manic to very severely manic.
It happens to, I think any long-running show, most of them fall into that trap where, well, the essence of the characters, they just become that.
Yeah, exactly.
Monica was a type A, now she's like a super type A. Joey was a little dumb, now he's really dumb, and so on. Yeah.
So let's give some context for the episode for what happened here. So we got a KSEL opener, and Elijah Wood is on the phone to Frasier pretty much right off the bat, and he's 13 years old. He's getting picked on by kids at school. Julio, you infamously don't like precocious kids in films and whatnot. Would you call Elijah precocious here on the phone? Perhaps intentionally so?
No, I think if he was like a 10-year-old making that call, then yes. I'd be like, they're just playing it too hard. No, a teenager, I thought it was good. I liked the turn where he just calls out Frasier on the most generic advice. And then what really made me laugh was Frasier being egging the bullies on him. Like, well, you know where he lives. Like that whole thing was funny. And there's a few instances in this episode and the other one that I watched where I laughed out loud. So that's how I knew that it was a show that would work in the long run for me. Because the fear would be that there are times where it could be a little too dry. What I said at the beginning, right? Like, what would you give Frasier the spinoff? Because on the surface, I don't find Frasier himself that funny. That type of character.
Let's just go back to this for a second, because you're right in that Frasier in and of himself is not very funny. Not in Cheers. In this run of Frasier, Kelsey Grammer's fantastic, but he's brilliant because of who he has to work with, whether it's Roz just cutting him down to size all the time, or Niles being this just priggish fop. Like it's excellent. The supporting cast around him are wonderful, which makes him shine. There has been a recent revamp. It's Frasier in his third phase of life. It just came out on Paramount. It got 2 seasons and it was cancelled a few days ago, which is Frasier post all of this with none of the original cast. Well, a couple of cast members just in supporting roles briefly, but it's Frasier in a new environment. And people are like, this is terrible because we don't want to just see Frasier. It's like what people were fearing when Cheers ended. It was, Frasier isn't funny if you take him out of that environment. Frasier's only funny.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Whereas here, when this show, it just hit the ground running. This first season, there's a couple of episodes that were Emmy winners, right, straight off the bat. And it just picked up more and more steam to the point where I actually think it gets higher ratings overall across the board than Cheers did. I think Cheers is okay. I think it's terribly dated. I think it's the same joke in every episode, repeated. And you could say that about a lot of sitcoms. But no, in fact, that's not fair. You can't. You have your core characters who have certain traits, and you lean into those traits for the benefit of the plot of the episode. Cheers, it was always Sam and Diane are almost going to sleep together. Sam and Kirstie Alley's character are almost going to sleep together, and it's the same joke all the time. Whereas for the Frasier one, every episode felt fresh. And one of the things that you'll possibly have heard me say in previous episodes is the thing that really sings for me in Frasier is the heart. If an episode has humor and real emotional resonance, perfection. Having said that, I don't think this is one of those episodes. I don't think this episode has an emotional heart.
Yeah, I don't think there is, even though I think that it is about something, that's always a nice thing because I can watch a comedy just to laugh. But then, yes, it can have heart, which makes it amazing, or it can at least have something to say, which I think that this, he's talking about how do you handle a parent dating, a parent having a life, fulfilling a role that you're not used to them having. That's what with the Martin character here, right? Like, how does he handle his dad having a girlfriend or a potential girlfriend having sex? I thought that was, that is a show that has a point of view about something, or is trying to tell you a story beyond like the gags of Niles banging his head on the kitchen or whatever.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. I mean, well, exactly. So I thought when I was watching this episode, and very early on we get this physical comedy gag, I thought, Julio ain't going to like this. I was like, Julio's going to think this is what the show is about. But that's rare. We don't often get scenes like that. But you're right, having something like that in a show which is also about the generational approach to sex and how openly do we talk about it is, yeah, I guess that's pretty much as close as we get in this episode to some sort of emotional heart or actually saying something. Before we get to that stuff, we get an introduction, and I have to say this for the Frasier people because otherwise they'll kill me. We get Patrick Kerr's first appearance as Noel the Mole Shemsky, which is this character lasts the entire run of Frasier. Julio, would it surprise you if I told you he was infatuated with Roz in every single episode?
No, because I'm infatuated with Roz. I think she's great. She might be my favorite character.
Yeah, she is great. On Niles, he bumps his head on the oven hood. You said to me yesterday, connection between him and a certain other sitcom character. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Do you see it? Do you see what I mean? Or is it? I don't even know if you watched The Big Bang Theory, but when he comes in, okay, he comes in on his first scene here, and wait, is it in this one, or is it no? I think it's in episode 7. It's when he comes in and he makes a face because he realizes that Frasier was on a date or is about to go on a date. So it has to be episode 7. But he silently opens his mouth and is like, oh my God. And he looked so much like Jim Parsons in The Big Bang Theory. Right? They're both tall, lanky guys. And then that kind of facial expression, and then he sits down and he starts talking, and he's very nerdy and very kind of the speech pattern. Obviously Sheldon in Big Bang Theory takes that to the extreme, but I could see like a connection, right, that I'd never seen before.
I mean, you're 100% right. I had never thought about it in that way, but you're right that Niles is the blueprint for Sheldon. Like Sheldon is Niles. There is never any explanation for why he is the way he is, other than he and Frasier are the absolute opposite of their father. They took after the mother, who liked the finer things, but also liked a ball game. But what is very interesting, Julio, is in this Frasier revival, which has now been cancelled, David Hyde Pierce Niles doesn't come back. As I say, most of the core cast don't. But they cast his son, Daphne and Niles' son, in this Frasier reboot, which is also called Frasier confusingly. And everyone, I mean, everyone is like, well, this is Sheldon. They've created Sheldon for did you like Big Bang Theory? Well, here's Sheldon in Frasier now. And I'd never made the connection before that it was actually probably just a full circle moment.
Right.
Really. The whole conceit is that Frasier wants to bring a woman over. He wants Niles to get the dad out, but the dad also has a date. So Frasier has to clear out for him. Cut to morning after, and Frasier and Daphne are in the kitchen. And before we get to the core humour of the episode, which is the fact that Elaine spent the night with his dad, leading, as Julio said, to all the awkwardness about, we don't talk about sex. And then Frasier goes on the radio and talks about sex. We get this ridiculous scene where Daphne is cooking up what she says, a traditional English breakfast. Now, one of the criticisms as a Brit of this show is their willingness to criticise Britain and England as much as possible, which is fine, on fair game, but this one was unintentional by them and it's appalling. They call this a traditional English breakfast. She says eggs and bangers, or as you call them, sausages. We don't call them bangers over here. They may have been called bangers in World War II. I've never called a sausage a banger. And finished off with her Grammy Moon sticky buns. Sticky buns are an American thing. We don't have sticky buns over here either. Julio, an English breakfast, a traditional English breakfast. There are 8 ingredients in a traditional English breakfast. You ask any English person, they will tell you all 8. What do you think they are?
Tea and biscuits.
Yes, tea is correct. On the side, yes. But on the plate, no.
So you just stuff that you see on the plate. Okay, well, eggs, right? Because eggs are universal. Everybody
Eggs is
eats
one,
eggs. Yeah. Toast? Is that America?
Toast? No, you're right. Toast is
okay.
2.
You guys don't do bacon. I mean,
we do.
I'm sure you do.
Bacon.
You do?
Bacon is 3. Yep.
Okay, well, now you're sounding American. You don't have grits, so what's the equivalent to grits over there?
What is grits? I've heard of grits. What is that?
Like oatmeal, maybe, but,
Oh. On the plate?
I can't even define. We don't have grits in Peru, which is, where I grew up. So when I came here and they're like, this is grits, I was like, okay, those are grits. Like, I don't have a definition for it. It's just like this goop.
Yeah, we don't have any goop on the plate. I'll tell you the remaining things. One is sausage. So we have bacon and sausage.
Not bangers, just sausage.
No bangers, just sausage. We have mushrooms. We have fried tomato. And the final thing...
Okay, beans you hadn't said. That sounds brutal for breakfast.
But not the kind of beans that you guys have. You guys have refried beans?
Well, I have lots of beans. But yeah, refried beans is what you put on burritos. And
so these beans are, we call them Heinz. I don't know if Heinz is a thing over there in the US. Do you know what Heinz is? You do?
Like the brand?
The brand?
Heinz?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, these are Heinz baked beans. They're a very British thing. Orange on a plate, very small beans. And it's the topping. The crucial ingredient which is missing, which you must have, is a hash brown. I don't know if you have hash browns.
We have hash browns. Those are a staple of American breakfast.
Now look at that. So there's more similarities than we thought. No, it's just that we have it almost every day over here, which is what's awful. I don't, but that's hangover breakfast stuff.
Like shredded potatoes, right? That's what we're talking about.
Shredded potatoes, and then sort of like kind of fried, baked, so you got the crunch around them, yeah?
So nothing like what Daphne
No, Daphne is eggs and bangers. I mean, I guess that would be
So is this something that happens often during the show? You, as a British viewer, you're constantly going like, this sounds like an American writing a British woman.
Oh, buddy. Daphne is the best example of them getting it right compared to any other time they try and do British stuff. One thing that's interesting is that John Mahoney, who is Martin, actually is from Manchester, where Daphne is meant to be from. And he's just putting on the accent for the show.
What?
Yes.
I had no idea. I've never seen him play anything but an American
I know.
dude.
I know. He alternates between the accents. Sometimes, if you see him in interviews, he'll be doing the American, but sometimes he'll do Manchester. There is one moment in Frasier where he's doing an impression of Daphne talking, and he's just doing his voice. It's great. Anyway, we get good double entendres, lots of awkwardness, interactions. My favorite highlights of the episode. I don't know if you had the lights on. I don't know how you like it, how you like to light it. That's funny stuff, man. This is why I love the show. Play some games, board games. Not that you're bored or excited. Not that I'd know anything or should. This is hilarious stuff. That is incredible writing. They never did that on Cheers. And then to sort of deal with this awkwardness, Frasier on his show decides to tell the listeners about the experience and reframe it. He's reframing a call that he's just taken and saying, oh, well, this has caused me to reflect on this, which Martin does not take kindly to and says that Elaine is refusing to take his calls. Julio, as a podcaster, have you ever caught yourself revealing anything on mic?
I don't think it's ever made it to the final episode. I've cut stuff. Yeah, just where I'm editing and I'm like, oh, this feels it just feels like I'm revealing too much, right? Like if it's for the patron, like I'll leave it on because patrons are just more like we're a little more of a close community there. But if it's just going out to the general public, I'm like, this is gonna make it awkward to whoever's listening. They don't want to know, which I think it's partly what Frasier is doing here. Like I think he's out of line to begin with, just sharing stuff about his dad, that he shouldn't to begin with. But also, I think if you listen to the show, it has to be, as an audience member, it has to take you back. Or like, why am I hearing about his father having sex?
Yeah.
I was surprised that Ross came in because I thought she was going to tell him, hey, what did you just do? But she comes in and she's like, that was a great show. Here's the problem, that he actually names he calls his girlfriend, his dad's girlfriend, by name, and he knew that she listened to the show because she tells him. So I as soon as it happened, I'm like, oh, I see where this is going. She's going to be mad because she's embarrassed in front of her friends.
Exactly. But in true sitcom form, everything is back to normal. The status quo is resumed at the end because he makes up for it. And then the episode ends with everyone in the building waiting for Elaine to turn up because obviously they've all heard it go out on air. Julio,
that was the biggest laugh I had in the episode. When they opened the doors, a whole bunch of people. I was like, of course, because it makes so much sense, right?
Yeah,
everybody listens to the show, so they're going to show up to see how the story pans out.
Even the doorman who's like, I've locked us all in. I've got to find out how this ends. By the sounds of it, it sounds like you did think it was funny, which is good.
I thought it was really funny. It's funny because you mentioned gender politics and Cheers, and it's been so long since I watched a Cheers episode that I can't even remember, what it was like to watch them back then, and I have no idea what it's like to watch them now. Watching Frasier, like this episode and the previous one I watched, number 7, there were a couple times when I was like, you wouldn't do that today, but it wasn't like jarring. It was more amusing. I think when you watch something with the context of when it was done and it's good, then you can, at least I feel like I can just shrug it off or think just as curious, maybe even like see it as a positive. It's like, man, we've come such a long way. I think that there is still, especially in sitcoms from that time, just the way that they handle women, like female characters, it's always, you always feel like they don't get as much to do as the guys, right? And so and if they do, it's kind of, it's almost like they're getting the spotlight. Like the Ross character, I think that she shines because it's kind of unusual. And some of the characters, the other women, are written as very like single-minded and like, well, I need to, this specific 2 episodes, right? Like, well, they're very much about their love lives, and that's it. Granted, they get they're like there for 1 episode, and we have the luxury of seeing everybody else in the show, But even then, like, I watched 2 episodes. Things. Right, but I mean, in 2 episodes, I got to see Frasier, Niles, Martin go through a lot more, right? And even allowing for increased screen time, you can see that, it just, I think that back then we wrote shows that were very much we were a lot more aligned and focused on the male experience, and that shows when you're watching it. And I don't think that that's bad, because I mean, you can have a show that's just about the male experience, you can have a show that's about the female experience.
It's a good point. It's 100%, because I was already thinking, oh yeah, but actually as the show goes on, they give a hell of a lot to Roz, but everything for Roz is dictated by relationships. Like her endeavors are her relationships with men, whereas yes, that's half of the joke for Frasier and Niles and Martin, but they go off on other escapades and get into humorous situations that have nothing to do with love, different interactions, which, that's true. We don't get a lot of that for Roz and Daphne. And if we do, we get it when they're alongside the guys. But they do give a lot of depth. It's baby steps, right? At that time, coming out of Cheers, for that time, they were doing some good shit. Like with Roz particularly, one of the key hearts of the show, and one of the big things for her is she gets pregnant accidentally, and she has to raise the kid by herself, and they really delve in deep to her fears around it, and they bring a lot of heart and humor out of it, and they really bolster up the friendship between Frasier and Roz and how he will be there for her, but they don't take away from her experience. But I guess it's not as progressive as it would be now.
But that's fine. I mean, that's why it's, progress happens through the years. Like, I think that if that was an episode that aired last night, I probably have more of a raised eyebrow about it. Like, what the hell are we still in the 90s?
I know, exactly. So, listen, we spent a lot of time on Frasier. We got to look to the future. The future in 1994 consisted of a 13-year-old Elijah Wood calling in to a radio show about his problems with the other kids at school.
Hi, Dr. Crane.
How old are you?
I'm 13.
Well, what can I do for you?
Well, I'm having a lot of problems with the other kids at school. They're always beating me up.
Why do you think that's so?
Probably because I'm smart. I have a 160 IQ. I'm in the astronomy club and I hate sports.
Well, Ethan, the other children are just acting out of jealousy and immaturity. I know it doesn't help much right now, but the day will come in the next few years when you will have the last laugh.
That's it?
Yes?
Frankly, Dr. Crane, I find that advice patronizing, simplistic, and in all candor uninspired. The real surprise here is that they pay you to dole out this balloon juice.
Ethan, where are you calling from?
Home.
Well, if any of Ethan's classmates are listening, you know where he is, and he can't stay in there forever. Thank you for your call.
So I say Elijah Wood to you, Julio. Lord of the Rings aside, what are some of the films that come to mind for you, for him, or some of the things that you know about him that you think of?
So Weird Mosher.
Yes.
And then I brought it up when we were trying to figure out which movie to do. I always think of The Good Son as something where that might be the first time that I became aware of him as an actor, just because I knew it was Macaulay Culkin and this other kid. So the other kid was Elijah Wood. So whenever I would see him in anything else, I would be like, oh, that's the kid from The Good Son, even though I haven't seen that movie. And then eventually he became Frodo.
But that's interesting, because it's him as a kid. And I also think before I started doing the digging into him, I was like, oh yeah, Elijah Wood. Okay, so away from Lord of the Rings, what am I thinking of? And I'm like, I feel like I watched a hell of a lot of stuff with him when he was a baby, like a child. And
you had to remind me, because I haven't seen it and I've forgotten. You had to remind me that he's in Flipper, right? Like, is that his big movie from when he was a kid?
He's in Flipper with Paul Hogan. Yeah. When you picked Elijah Wood, I was half hoping you would pick Flipper. I haven't seen Flipper. I haven't seen it. But I understand that there's a hell of a lot of weird Paul Hogan shit that goes along with that. Paul Hogan was hugely inappropriate on the set of Flipper a lot, in all sorts of ways, which could have been fun to talk about, but forget that. I've got some stuff here where he was in Back to the Future, Part 2, in a very small role. He has a speaking role. He's playing an arcade game. He says, "You have to use your hands," to Marty McFly.
Oh, that's him? Wow. I remember the character. I don't remember realizing that was him.
He was in, and this is coming to the Contrarians at some point when I make my next request, because I keep sending Andy Garcia films your way. He had a very small part in Internal Affairs. He was Richard Gere's son in that. I don't know if you've seen that. Nope. He auditioned for Kindergarten Cop and got told this by director Ivan Reitman. His performance was not believable. He was like 9 years old, 8 or 9 years old. Listeners, you may know him from Lord of the Rings. What you may not know is the path that led him there. So he was born, he's like me and Julio, he's a January boy. He was born January the 28th, 1981. His parents owned a delicatessen, but sold it and moved to LA when he was 7 in order to help him pursue an acting career, which sounds pretty supportive. He describes his ancestry as a bit of Danish, a bit of English, and a bit of Irish. And on arrival in LA, he began modeling and appearing in commercials until he got his first role in the made-for-TV film Child in the Night. And very, very quickly, he started appearing in the films that we were just talking about. Back to the Future, Internal Affairs, Forever Young, the Snowstorm, the Ice Storm. He was in the Ice Storm.
Yes, yeah, he is in the Ice Storm. I thought that came out later in his career because he's kind of one of the main roles in there. Well, I mean, it's an ensemble, but
he's a teenager in it, right? Early teens, I guess.
Yeah, he's Christina Ricci's age there.
His parents separated, but he has said that his mum, throughout the separation and while he was pursuing this acting career, absolutely kept his feet on the ground. So he said that his mum was providing the fundamentals of his upbringing to make the transition to adulthood as smooth and as unrocky as possible, given that he was in LA appearing in films all the time. So his mum, and this is beautiful, was more concerned with raising him as a good human being than as a good actor, which I like to hear it, because these are the kind of things that we don't hear about. And this is respect to Elijah Wood and his mum on this. She would accompany him to film sets to ensure that he was minding his manners. One of the key things that he remembers is her telling him no jumping in front of the crew members in the lunch line, and to hang up his own wardrobe at the end of the day. Something he says, which he still does to this day. That makes me think a hell of a lot of actors don't, and they're just whipping the costume off and dropping it to the floor, which is not nice to know. But this kind of instillment of good values at a young age meant that he was in the position where he could handle the transition to Lord of the Rings level fame when it arrived, right? He comes across as a nice guy. Let's flash forward to a recent shortlist that was made, which lists Elijah Wood as one of the top 10 best autograph signers of all time. This was a list, yes. And now I'm going to throw to you in a second, Julio, to play a little game. So basically, this list is put together by autograph hunters out in Hollywood who regularly, chase people down, I suppose, and get their autograph. And people were polled and they were asked who are the nicest, the ones who stop, the one who talk, the one who are very pleasant, and who are the worst. He is number 7 of the 10 best autograph signers. And I've seen him in an interview. He said, like, if someone wants to come up to me and wants my signature or wants to tell me that they enjoyed my work, I love that. So I'm going to do it, which is very nice. That's nice to hear. Number 7. Who do you think joins him on that top 10 list? With the caveat, I should say, that this list was written 2008, 2009.
It's pre-COVID, so everybody was a little nicer.
Yeah, everyone was a lot nicer then. I'm actually going to play this game differently. I'm going to tell you the best, and I want you to guess the worst. So from 10 to 1, Clint Eastwood. Number 9, Jack Nicholson.
Hang on. Is Kevin Smith in the top 10? Because that would have been my only guess.
He ain't, buddy. I'm sorry to disappoint you. He is not. Brittany Murphy, sadly. But Brittany Murphy. Tom Cruise, number 5. I think that's an ego trip for Tom, though. Al Pacino, number 4. Matt Damon, number 3. George Clooney, number 2. And Johnny Depp, number 1. I mean, that's a very 2006, 2007 kind of list. The worst, Julio. Who do you think have voted the worst? So this is based on the autograph signers saying not only do they not sign, that they back chat, say negative things to them, tell them to fuck off, etc.
It's just actors, right?
Yes. Actors and actresses. Yeah.
Actors and actresses. Do they have a top 10 also, or do they just say
top
this
10? Yeah,
Okay.
there is one that they are like, this person is the worst. And it's surprising.
Well, it's not Kevin Smith. We know that.
It's not Kevin Smith, but let me give you a clue. One of these people is going to break your heart.
Oh, no. Kate Winslet?
No.
Okay. Winona Ryder?
Correct.
No.
Number 7 worst autograph signer of all time. And I don't know specifically why she's listed, but it's within that description of...
Look, in her defense...
Julio is a very big fan of Winona.
Yes, she went through a lot, and I'm sure that now she's just weary of people coming up to her and asking her about her dark times. So, I don't know. But she seems to be very not interested in traditional fame, and so I think that she's probably just very guarded with her privacy. She doesn't have social media, that kind of stuff. So that makes me think Harrison Ford might be on that list.
No, he's not. That's a good call. The thing with Harrison Ford is he's very playful with his grumpiness.
Yes.
Let me just give them to you. Okay, here's a clue. One of them plays a character very close to your heart. Very close to your heart.
Tobey Maguire.
Correct. Yeah, he's number 4. Number 2 and number 3 were married to one another.
Well, you already said Angelina Jolie's in the good ones, because otherwise I would have said Jolie and Billy Bob Thornton. Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston.
No. One of them is currently an Oscar nominee. Although by the time this episode comes out, they will either have won or lost.
I haven't seen most of the nominees. Adrian Brody and whoever.
It's Demi Moore and Bruce Willis.
Oh, well, that was the early 2000s.
Here's 10-2. Russell Crowe with a bullet, number 10.
Yeah.
Joaquin Phoenix, hardly surprising. Terry Hatcher, Winona Ryder, Halle Berry, Alan Alda, which is just weird. But yeah, I can believe it. Toby, Demi, Bruce. Number 1, Cameron Diaz.
That can't be right.
Okay, this is a quote from one of them. I used to think she was a talented... I mean, some of these people are going to have been slighted, right, by an engagement with them. I used to think she was a talented actress, but she's persistently been a terrible signer. Instead of just turning down my autograph request, she lectured me about how dumb autographs are. So, I mean, it's all in your perception, It's all in your perception.
Well, you catch them on a bad day, and then that's the one thing that you take as to define their... I don't know how I would handle autograph people. I've seen them because, we have a couple like big film festivals here in Austin, and there are people that are literally in line just to get an autograph, not because they care about the movies or the craft or anything. So in that sense, I can see how it could just get on your nerves.
Anyway, Elijah's one of the good ones, which is nice. So conversely, he had a great relationship with his mum, but he said that he was quite hyper aware of the fact that him and his dad were not connecting. He was aware that his friends had a much deeper relationship with their fathers than he had with his, but as a result of this, he became very appreciative of the close relationship he had with his brother Zach, who was 7 years older than him. And he said that Zach always included Elijah in whatever activities he was doing with his friends. So if he was renting horror movies, Elijah would be there watching horror movies well ahead of the age that he should have been. When it came to music, Zach's passion for it was shared with his younger brother. And as they got older and older, they didn't separate. They just were a twosome all the way along. And he really relished the musical influence that Zach had over him in particular. Let's flash forward again. Horror movies and music. So Elijah Wood, which I didn't know had this deep connection to horror movies, he actually founded a production company in 2010 called The Woodshed. It's now called Spectrovision, and he's produced like a whole stream of horrors and sci-fis, which is very cool. One of the films was Color Out of Space, which I know you guys have seen. You covered it.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate the effort, even if I didn't appreciate the movie.
Yeah, me too. But in terms of him in horror, I've got to recommend it, but I'm well aware of who I'm recommending it to, Julio, as someone who doesn't really like horror. Maniac. Have you seen him in Maniac?
I have not. It sounds familiar. Now that with the Elijah Wood connection, I think I know what you're talking about. But yeah, no, I haven't seen it. Is he the maniac in the movie?
He's the maniac. It came out, I think, not long after Lord of the Rings, so he was obviously pursuing all these different avenues, and it's all POV for the most part. I mean, to be honest, Elijah Wood is hardly in it. You only ever really see him in mirrors and reflections, but you hear his voice from time to time. But I think it's very well executed horror film. It's not going to be your bag, so I'm not even going to pursue that. But for other horror fans, go and check it out. And the passion for music. So Julio, you brought it up that your friends had seen him moshing at music festivals. So check it out. At the age of 14, so obviously he had this musical influence from his brother. At the age of 14, he self-taught himself how to play the piano, and he learned everything by ear. No sheet music, no lessons. And he's continued being a piano player all these years. For the last 15 years, he's done this thing which so many actors tend to do, but he's doing it with aplomb. He's DJing. So he's built up this huge, massive vinyl collection. So he said that he started casually collecting in the Lord of the Rings days. He was getting some vinyls, and then it built into this huge thing that was all encompassing for him. And he's spinning decks all the time. How do you feel about celebrities turned musicians, Julio? And by that I mean ones who aren't doing it as their main focus. They're like, oh yeah, now we're doing this, like Idris.
It's never prompted me to go and seek out their music, and I don't think that I can think of anyone where it hit it that big where I didn't have to seek it out. It was just there. Yeah. So I mean, it's never. It always feels a little weird, I guess. I don't know if you ever watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
In parts, yeah.
Okay, so Giles, Anthony Head.
Don't tell me he's a DJ.
He's not a DJ, but I remember that shortly after they did the musical episode, so that was season 6, I remember reading that he had released an album. And I was like, what? But it's what you said. I mean, you can do whatever you want, obviously.
Yeah.
But on the heels of him, because he does fine in the musical episode. He's one of the, I think, the best singers in that episode. And
okay, all right.
It always feels like, oh, everybody told him that he was one of the best in the episode. So you know how you tell your buddy, like, you should do this full time, and so he goes. He
took it to heart.
Yeah.
Well, good for him. And listen, look, if Elijah Wood's doing it, he's having a good time with it. He's been doing it for 15 years. This is building up a little picture for me anyway. He's doing horror production. He's DJing. The guy likes to have fun. He's playful, and
he sounds like an Austinite. 100%.
I'm glad that you knew this. I'm glad and I'm not glad, because I was kind of hoping to surprise you with the fact that he was an Austinite. But I'm glad that you know this. Yeah, the whole thing of keep Austin weird, like it feels like it's made for him. So okay. Let's flash back. As you might expect, he said that he didn't have a very typical high school experience because of traveling for film. No prom, no graduation. High school was all correspondence. He was learning the scripts and learning his books simultaneously. And he said that he was glad he wasn't this huge overnight success, and that slowly and surely he grew in the spotlight. At the age of 18, he was cast in Lord of the Rings. Julio, I don't want to spend any length of time on Lord of the Rings because everyone talked about it to the nth degree, but thoughts?
I mean, I think that's him for the rest of his life, and I don't think that he cares. I hope he doesn't, right? But I don't know how he can... And I'm not even a huge fan of the movies. I mean, I like them. I think they're good, but it's not my type of fantasy.
Don't you dare, Julio. This is not your type of fantasy. This is big, epic storytelling. With the heroes and villains.
Yes, but it's a little... I know that, man, whatever goodwill I've managed to gather throughout this conversation is going out the window with your listeners. Yeah. It's a little too, like, clean cut, like Lord of the Rings. And I know there is some nuances to the characters and whatever, but I am more, if we have to make a comparison or like point you into the direction that works for me, I'm more of a, like, the Game of Thrones kind of person, where it's like everything is dirty and everybody is very... You know, everybody in Lord of the Rings, or, you know, all the heroes are heroes through and through. And I'm like, that's cool, but I don't find it as compelling as, you know, again, Game of Thrones is like the first thing that comes to mind. Yeah. It doesn't mean that I mean, they're fantastic movies. They're amazing to watch, and you know, but I'll need to ever sit through them again.
I do like the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I'm not, as you know, I'm not really one for... Well, that's not true. Fantasy storytelling, it's a broad term, but, you know, I love Game of Thrones. And Lord of the Rings, I actually appreciate as I get older because it feels like I'm settling into a comfortable level of I need something that is feel good while also having stakes, and that's what Lord of the Rings is for me. Elijah Wood in particular as Frodo in that is so, and alongside Sam, is just so quaint and Frasier-like in a way. It's the kind of thing Frasier would love to watch. It's very sweet and it's a bit saccharine, but I enjoy it more as I get older. You must have seen the incredible interview with Monaghan? Not Monaghan.
Yeah, Dominic Monaghan. I think that's him.
So he is. Have you seen the interview where Elijah Wood can't see that he's being interviewed by him? So it's a remote connection. So he's just getting it in the earpiece. And so he's doing a voice and he's asking Elijah Wood if he wears wigs.
No.
Oh, I'm going to, for everyone listening.
Hair changes dramatically from short to long. Do you wear wigs?
No, I do not.
Have you worn wigs?
No, I have not.
Will you wear wigs?
Maybe.
When will you wear wigs?
You know, by now, like Lord of the Rings, like the movies have been part of our lives for, you know, however long. So it almost feels, I have a hard time imagining a time when it wasn't that. And I know Lord of the Rings as a book, you know, as a series of books, they were big to begin with. But I don't know that anybody knew that it was going to be what it became. I think that they might have hoped that it was going to do well, but for it to become, obviously they had faith in the project, right? Like they shot them all three, you know, at once and all that. But I mean, I think it was a big gamble, and I don't know. I mean, I guess only he would know if he went into it thinking if this does well, it's going to define how people see me forever. Because I think that, you know, going back to what I said, I think that he's going to be Frodo forever, for the rest of his life. Because that's what you think of, you know, more so than any of the other actors, you know, McKellen, Mortensen, Sean Astin, you know. And I think that they all can kind of say, yeah, I was in Lord of the Rings, but I also have done all this stuff. I think when it comes to Elijah Wood, he is Frodo. He's in the center of that first poster, and that's what you think of. It's like...
Well, I mean, that is interesting, because use Radcliffe as a comparison. I can't ever take Radcliffe seriously in anything else because he is Harry
Potter. Yeah.
That he just is. But not to jump ahead, with Everything Is Illuminated, I wasn't ever sitting there and I'm like, oh yeah, there's Frodo. I'm like, well, here he is. Here's Jonathan. He's Jonathan.
Yes, but I mean, I was thinking more of I don't think acting wise, but more as in if somebody ever comes up, right? What do you think of? And so with him, it's always going to be Lord of the Rings. You're not going to think Everything's Illuminated. You're going to think Flipper. You're going to think Lord of the Rings. Radcliffe, by the way, you should look up. I always thought of him as Harry Potter. I still do, but the moment that he convinced me, or he made me realize that he had so much more to do, he was on Broadway. He was in How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. And online, they have his performance of the final number on the show, and it is amazing. His singing and his dancing, you're like, wow. I mean, he can do whatever he wants right now because, you know, he has the Harry Potter money. So
exactly. He could be out DJing. He needs to get some vinyl collection going. All right, let's not spend any more time on Lord of the Rings. Everyone knows the deal. Go and look into it. I do think it's kind of nice though that they all seem to have kept up the friendship and the kinship. I guess going through that was a very unique bonding experience. We've mentioned the horror production company and his music ventures, but let's sort of look at 2004 to present then. Post that, how do you get away from Frodo? Where do you go? What do you do? So some of his roles, I know you will have views on some of these, and I think maybe, if I remember correctly, another movie from your top 10, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yes. Yeah. I never think of him because obviously you think Carrie, Winslet, Ruffalo, because Ruffalo is just, you know, he went on and he took over the world. He's
picking what we'll see here. Like if I list out some of these films here, we'll see he may say, oh, it wasn't intentional. Like I just go with the word. I just thought it was a really good story. He's intentionally picking things to get away, as far away as possible from Lord of the Rings. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Sin City.
Yep.
Sin City, which I was reminded of while watching Everything Is Illuminated as well. The glasses, yeah. Everything Is Illuminated. Green Street, which if you want to talk about just awful American viewpoints of British culture. In fact, I think it's rebranded over there for you guys. I think it's called Hooligan Street. Or
I think it's Green
something.
Street Hooligans.
Right, okay. Whereas over here, we know what Green Street is, so they just do that. He was in a small part in Paris Chatham, a voice in Happy Feet. He was in Bobby and moved into TV stuff. He did Wilfred, which I never saw. I don't know if you saw Wilfred.
I've seen the commercials. Doesn't he have a dog, an imaginary dog that he talks to? Yeah.
Quirky, offbeat. There is something which I'm currently watching, which he's in Yellow Jackets, which he's pretty good in. He was only introduced in the second season. They didn't actually give him a hell of a lot to work with, but what happened in second season promises a lot for him in the third season as well. So I'll be interested to see where he goes with that. What for you has been like the defining performance from him post Lord of the Rings?
And he was, I don't know, I would call it defining, but really it's like probably the last time that I was watching something with him that I was paying attention. He was, speaking of TV, he was in the Dirk Gently TV show that's based on, so you know Douglas Adams from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So he had a less popular series of books that were Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. Dirk Gently is a private detective, but he's all weird and quirky, and that is not played by Elijah Wood. Elijah Wood is his client or somebody related to the case in the first season. So he's kind of like the innocent bystander, while the guy that's playing Dirk Gently is just being super weird around him. And it was a really weird show, but it felt like it was being very true to the Douglas Adams spirit. Like, I've never read the books. I've read The Hitchhiker Guide to the Galaxy, and I'm like, this feels like something that would be written by the same guy that has so many ideas. And I never watched the second season, but Elijah Wood is great in it. He's a good counterpart for the weirdness, and I don't know that I can pin him down on anything else. You know, like as I was watching this, I also went to Sin City, and I think that my idea of Elijah Wood beyond Lord of the Rings is just like, oh, this is just a kid that shows up in other things. And I think of him as a kid. I think that he doesn't age. He always looks so youthful and
agreed.
Like he's still Frodo.
He is. I mean, but I think a lot of that comes down to the playful nature he has. Like doing all this digging, I haven't found a negative thing about him. And of course, he's a human being. He has negative things, but I think he feels blessed and he appreciates that he got that gig. Like you say, I don't think that he's one of these people who's like, the fact that this is going to define me sucks. I think he is like, great, okay, I had this huge success. Now I'm going to go off and do these other things that I love doing. I'm going to invest in my music career. I'm going to invest into my horror films. I'm going to go and eat food all around Austin, which brings me to this point, Julio. So you know that he is a Austinite. Did you know that he is a frozen pizza obsessive? This, I thought, was just a cute bit of trivia. He absolutely loves frozen pizza. He considers himself a foodie, but his favorite thing is to get different types of frozen pizza, bring them home and make them. That is absolutely because he has all the money in the world and he's getting fine dined left, right and center. So he's like, just take me back to my roots. But this, I don't know, maybe you know these places, maybe you don't, Julio. So he has been asked in Austin, Texas, if you could create, foodie that he is, the best breakfast, lunch, dinner combo in the city.
Okay.
Where would you go? What would the cuisines be and where would you go? Can you guess any of the cuisines or the restaurants? I know, obviously, there's a million restaurants, but give it a whirl.
This is a question for my co-host, for Alex, because he's the one that always is talking about like the good places to eat in Austin. I don't. I just go wherever my wife takes me. But I'm assuming that he starts with breakfast tacos and goes from there. He
Correct.
might say barbecue at some point, even though I think Alex has corrected me whenever I have said that you go to Austin for barbecue. Apparently you go to Dallas for barbecue, and Austin is just kind of like the second option.
I only know that because of King of the Hill.
That's right. You are a King of the Hill enthusiast. It would be funny if he says that like where you go after hours, after you've gone drinking or whatever, is Whataburger. Like at 2 in the morning.
Well, you're right on the breakfast tacos. Yes. So El Primo is his recommendation. Apparently it's a taco truck on South 1st Street. That might mean something to you.
I mean, depending on when he did this, because post
About 6 months ago, I believe.
Oh, okay. Then, yeah, I guess they're still there.
Yeah, that's why I thought maybe you might know some of these. I mean, Austin's fucking huge. So these are like, this is a needle in a haystack. Pizza for lunch, Detroit-style pizza at Pizza Via 313.
Yeah, I've been there. My father-in-law took us there a couple times, and yeah, it's good. It's good.
Well, it's got the Julio and the Elijah thumbs up. And for dinner is ramen at Ramen Tatzie.
I know the place. I've never been because I'm not a big ramen fan. Yeah, I want to say that's downtown.
He says the pork katsu slider from them is the stuff of dreams. So if you are ever tempted, Julio, that's where you go.
So no barbecue. He doesn't mention Franklin's. I mean, I guess he's too hip for Franklin's. Franklin's is where like tourists go. he's going to give you the deep cuts.
He gives me vegetarian vibes. So the fact that he ain't... Interesting. One of the other things that's interesting about him, Julio, is he is also a video game obsessive, and he's done lots of voices in video games. He was the voice of Spyro the Dragon, which I never played, but I'm aware it's got a lot of love. He made an appearance in God of War. He was selected by Microsoft to unveil the Xbox 360 because of his love of video games, and his personal passion project, if he can get it off the ground, is to make a movie or TV series based on the Grand Theft Auto universe. I think this would be a terrible mistake. It works in game format for what it is. If you put that into a TV series or a film, it's like, well, this is every film ever set in LA, right?
I think the biggest problem is that, well, maybe he just wants to produce it, because I don't, my image of Elijah Wood doesn't fit in what I think of when I think of Grand Theft Auto. And this is somebody who just watches the game from outside. I've never played them.
And, you know, these are just sort of like some of the other strands to the Elijah personality. Without going into detail, he's done a lot of charitable work for many, many people as well. He's raised a lot of money for different causes. He's participated in the Occupy Wall Street movement. He's a Democrat. So all that's good stuff. I probably shouldn't have left this last thing as the last thing that I say, because it kind of, where else was it going to go though? One of the more recent things, which kind of sounds like it should be a Corey Feldman quote, in a 2016 interview with the Sunday Times, Wood accused Hollywood of being organised by paedophiles who preyed on children within the industry, including many of his fellow child actors. And Wood, going right back to the beginning, he credited his mother with protecting him from these vipers and parties where that kind of thing was going on. After the interview where he said that made headlines, he clarified that he had no first-hand experience or observation of the topic. I don't know why I left that to be the last thing that I spoke about, but, you know.
Based on, not even recent, like, I think that there's been, over the past few years, a lot more of uncovering and, just really nasty, disturbing stuff that's going on. So I can see how, if you're in the industry, you probably have stories to tell, or at the very least you've been told stories. And that quote by itself, I mean, it obviously is pretty jarring. I don't know what the context of the interview was. I'm sure there was a little bit more build up.
The context was, what's your perfect breakfast, lunch and dinner combo in Austin? And I was like, don't you know there's a paedophile ring in Hollywood? Don't ask me this. Well, look, on that ridiculous note to end it on, come on, let's talk about this film, this anomaly, right? This thing that neither of us were really aware of. I mean, I had awareness of the book, Julio, but I didn't make a connection to it until I watched the movie. I'm like, oh, right, that's that book that I always saw. I always saw the black and white pebble effect, like colour in Waterstones over here. Let's segue right into it.
Jonathan is traveling halfway around the world.
You my translator?
Forgive my speaking of English, Jonathan, as I'm not so premium with it.
To search for the woman who saved his grandfather in World War II.
It's my grandfather, Saffron.
And this is Augustina? This is our driver. Please, do not be distressed. This is only driver seeing eye, bitch.
Wait, he's blind?
Only he thinks this.
Father informs me you're writing a book about this trip.
I'm not a writer, more of a collector.
And what do you collect?
Things. Family things.
In a world far from ordinary.
It's nice.
Make sure to secure the door when I'm gone. There are many dangerous people who want to take things from Americans and also kidnap them. Good night.
In a place far from home.
I'm a vegetarian.
You're a what?
I don't eat meat.
Pork?
No.
Chickens?
No.
And what about the sausage?
No meat.
What is wrong with you?
Everything is Illuminated, released 2005, directed by Liev Schreiber. It is directorial debut and starring Elijah Wood, Eugene Hutz, and Boris Lioskin. Now, normally, Julio, I would start by talking exclusively about the film first and then coming to our actor afterwards. But I think let's start with Elijah first. Let's start with the character of Jonathan and Elijah Wood's.
I mean, that is I'm talking about him being in the poster of Lord of the Rings, like front and center. And this is at least the book I knew because I worked at Barnes & Noble for a few years, and that's how I knew the book. Like, I never read it. I didn't know what it was about, but it was Elijah Wood's face with the big glasses. It was the movie version of the book. On the surface, I think it sells itself to you as his story, as Jonathan's story. And my first reaction after having finished the movie was, I like this, but this was Alex's story. And Jonathan was kind of there to, I guess, sort of be not even our point of view character, because Alex is our point of view character, but he's there, I guess, to make the story happen. But when the movie was over, I didn't feel like I had any insight into Jonathan's character. Anything, I hadn't learned anything about him that I didn't know at the beginning, really. And that's not a criticism, but it's something that comes through, I think, or doesn't come through because of the performance. I think the performance is just so muted, and he is so restrained, who's socially awkward, that I had a hard time connecting with his character. And then, Alex, the character of Alex, played by Eugene, Hux. I think he makes up for it because he's the guy that's, talking a lot and telling you what he thinks, and how he feels, and you can see the conflicts that he's dealing with, and then, he carries you through the movie. So I don't think it's Elijah Wood's fault. I mean, it's hard to tell. Like, was this direction, right? Was it Liev Schreiber telling him this is how you're going to play it? Was it his take on the character after reading the book? Was it his take on the character after meeting the author? Because this is autobiographical, right? Was it just a demand from the author? Who knows? But I think that what ended up on screen is definitely not a charismatic protagonist. It's just kind of somebody that's there to move the plot forward. And I guess if I want to be, on the negative side, I'm like, well, it doesn't do Elijah Wood any favors. You wouldn't put it up as a showcase, I think, of his acting abilities.
No.
But the movie works, so I also wouldn't say that he ruins the movie for me. It's just that it's funny to take this as this is the Elijah Wood episode, so we're going to talk about Elijah Wood movie, and he is probably the thing that I had the most trouble with while watching it.
Well, that's why I said let's talk about him first, because it reflects this episode. He's not what the focus is on. It starts being Elijah's story, Jonathan's story, but it's Alex's story by the end. I mean, actually, arguably, it's never Jonathan's story, because Alex is bookending it. It's his letters either side. Just for some context for listeners who have decided to listen who haven't seen the film, this is a film based on a book based on Jonathan's real life experience. So it's fractured through two lenses. There's an actual author. The Jonathan is called Jonathan Safran Foer. I realise I'm calling him Jonathan rather than Jonathan.
like Alex.
Simply because Alex does that, yeah. Jonathan Safran Foer, who, after the death of his grandfather, he realised that he needed to learn more about his escape from Ukraine during the war. And he'd never really delved into it. So he went to Ukraine to try and find someone who helped his grandfather escape, because he lives in the US. And as part of that process, he wrote the novel of the same name. He wrote the novel, obviously added fiction to it alongside the reality. And then Liev Schreiber made this film. So it's been fractured twice over from the true story. So for me, it's hard not to look into the book comparisons and the real life thing, but taking the film on its own merits, the thing that I struggled with the most was, it should have been Alex's story. So you've suckered us in with the Elijah Wood character. We should have just followed Alex. However, how could we follow Alex without Jonathan coming over? Because in order for us to get this story, this relationship of Alex and his blind granddad traveling across the Ukraine with this Jewish American guy to find the person who helped his grandfather, how could we learn more about Alex and his grandfather's situation? It would have to be a new story. But then casting Elijah Wood in that role feels like, I'm like, Liev, man, this is stunt casting. What are you doing here? You know that you've fooled some people, right? But he's good in the role. He does still strike me as very much a serial killer persona, I have to say.
It's the glasses, right?
It is it's the glasses, Julio, but it's also the bags of everything that have meant something significant to him, including a fucking condom in a Ziploc bag. Like, really? What are we doing here? Come on. I get the keeping mementos for moments. It's actually a very beautiful sentiment. Okay, I don't want to forget things, so rather than take a picture in a moment, I will take a memento of something. That's a nice idea. Condom? Come on, man. Come on, Jonathan. What are you thinking?
I mean, maybe it was a particularly meaningful encounter. You don't know.
I would assume that it's the one he used when he lost his virginity. But that is not what this film is about. Anyway, you can't tell us, here's Jonathan's story, then say, actually, this is Alex's story, and then by the end of the film, actually make it Alex's granddad's story. By that point, I'd fallen out of love with the film. Because first, if you want to call it a film in 3 acts, first act, quirky humor, introduction to Alex, all his pidgin English, which is very funny. It may be low-hanging fruit, but it's very funny. Bringing in Jonathan in, following him. But now we're learning more about Alex, and Alex is learning to reflect a little bit more on why his grandfather is in repose. What is he thinking about? Something's going on. And it's like, okay, so we've balanced some humor and we're getting a little bit of gravitas. And by the end, it's full gravitas with the reveal that Alex's grandfather is actually Jewish and survived by the skin of his teeth and by the help of that woman. I think it's unearned by that point. But by that point, you've changed the film so much from what I was watching at the beginning. I can't honestly buy into this whole thing.
I was still with it. Actually, I want to clarify when I said the glasses, because I was like, now suddenly everybody with glasses is like, do I look like a serial killer? No, it's the glasses because his character in Sin City wore very distinctive glasses. So it's like, and he was a serial killer in that one. So that's the association. You have to, did he do this after Sin City, right?
This is after Sin City, yeah.
Yeah, they have to have seen that. I was like, how? But then I guess
surely. Probably the same glasses.
But then the real Jonathan wears glasses, so maybe there was no way around it. Anyway, I think that where my experience was a little more positive was that I latched on to the Alex character and I just let him carry me through the story. So I was actually pleasantly surprised that the tone changes from very over-the-top comedy to really grim tragedy that they didn't take me out of the movie. The only way I can explain it is that I was so in tune with what Eugene
Hutz,
whatever, yes, with what he was doing, that I was just letting him carry me through the movie. And so sometimes he's just being really funny, and the way that he speaks English and the way that he reacts to his translations like killed me, because I've been there, right? Like we go back home to Peru and I'll take, my wife comes with me. At this point, my wife doesn't need me to translate anything, but if we're going with my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, and somebody will give me like a whole paragraph of Spanish, and then I translate it to them in like one word or, one sentence. So Alex is doing that through the movie, and I was like, that was pretty endearing. And just his slowly realization of the complexities of the situation and what's developing empathy for Jonathan developing empathy for whatever his grandfather is hiding and slowly theorizing, what do you think this means? Why is my grandfather doing this? That captivated me, whether it was being funny or not. And so when we get to the big gut punch at the end, it's funny because it almost has nothing to do with the movie. But my first thought was like, I can't believe that I'm not turned off, that I haven't turned on the movie by now, right? Because it's such a, you could call it like such a cheap button to push. And it's like, oh, and then he kills himself. But no, it just felt like, oh, that's how we're ending the story. It makes sense.
What turned me off is not that moment particularly. It's once they turn up at the house and find her, like very beautiful, with the sunflowers, very beautiful setting, and what the scene means and the significance is quite moving. But everything is so coincidental, and this just so happened to be that this grandfather who was taking this Jewish guy all the way across Ukraine just also happened to have this connection with this town, where the only thing that we have to go on that maybe he knew what he was doing is when Troshenbo gets mentioned around the dining table earlier on, when his son is saying someone's paid. Otherwise, there was no reason for him to have any history or connection with that town. And all of a sudden, not only is Elijah, here's the backstory for you, Elijah. Jonathan, here's everything. This is what happened. And also, just by chance, Alex, your granddad as well. Let's have a conversation with him and reveal that. And I'm like, oh no, this feels like now we're going to force the emotion, because it's, the guy who's been the arsehole to the Jewish guy all along actually has been hiding this secret. And I'm like, I don't buy it, because at the same time you're giving me this really grave situation, which is horrible, but you're making me swallow those two pills at the same time, and it was a little too much for me at that point.
I think that maybe it didn't bother me because even if he wasn't as coincidental, if he just kept like the basics of the story, because the grandfather could have had that experience in a different town, a different village, and but you still work, right? That going through the journey with Jonathan reminds him of everything that he lived through, and hearing the story of Jonathan's grandfather and Jonathan's grandfather's wife, right? They got married.
Yeah.
Or at least future mother of his son, unborn son. All that awakens in him all these memories, to where even if he's not related, his experience did not happen in this village, he still feels troubled by it, or feels like he needs some sort of closure. So I get it. And it's actually, again, surprising that it didn't bother me so much that they were all tying it together so neatly. I was not thinking, when I was watching this, I was not thinking this is autobiographical. I just assumed that it was a guy kind of using his name, and I guess what it turned out to be, right? He went on this trip that obviously was not what you see in the movie. From what I just glanced at some of the trivia, and it was like, oh, the guide was Alex, but we didn't become friends or anything.
No, exactly. I haven't read the book, but I've read what the difference is, and this is, I think, where this is Liev's big mistake. This is where the film falls down for me, because if he'd kept this as it was in the book, this would have worked much better. In the book, the reveal is that Alex's grandfather, Troshimbo, if that's the name of the town, I'm sure I'm saying it wrong, was half Jewish, half Gentile. So half the population were Jewish, half the population were not Jewish. And Alex's grandfather wasn't Jewish, but he pointed out his best friend to the Nazis who was Jewish.
I thought that was the secret. Did you, when you were watching the movie, did you think that was the big secret?
I thought the grandfather was a Nazi. I thought he did the shooting for the longest time. I thought that was what the big secret was going to be. So when that reveal came in the film, I was like, oh, he's the absolute opposite of what I was thinking. But the key thing of him not being Jewish, and it not being about a suppression of his Jewish identity, but about suppressing this awful thing he did to his Jewish best friend to save his own life, that for me has a lot more emotional weight to it than I was nearly killed, and the only way that I can survive is to just disconnect from my Jewish identity. Because I get it, right? The book is about Jewish identity and not forgetting the terrible things that have happened. But for Jonathan, he hasn't forgotten that. He is an American Jew. He's coming and he's wanting to connect to his Jewish past. Whereas the granddad has just completely covered it up. I'm disconnected. I'm not Jewish at all. In fact, I'm going to say horrific anti-Semitic things several times throughout the film. And then he's revealed, oh, actually he was Jewish. I think it's far more powerful if the reveal is he's not Jewish and he did kill his best friend to save his own life. That I would have enjoyed that. That would have been better for me.
But do you think that makes it too hard to forgive him as a viewer at the end? Given that this movie is like an hour 45 and we're already juggling like a few other elements, you know, it's not just him. So the moment that you reveal that, it was like, how much more time are you going to spend now trying to get us to forgive this guy? Because that is, you don't have to forgive him for anything. The movie the way it is now, you just have to, you understand, because it's I think that there's a big source of shame in just the fact that he renounces his identity as a Jew, right? He takes the star off and then he goes on to pretend that he's anti-Semitic, and you can draw the parallel with the fact that before they, you know, that the Nazis were forcing them to spit on the Torah and all that, you know, you're just going against your identity as a Jew. And then, so he does that. So it's almost, I would say, he doesn't need to have killed anybody. Just the fact that that transgression, renouncing his Judaism, you know, that is enough for him to be that type of character that we get there. Maybe the book, I mean, I don't know if the book has more time and more, you know, they can get you to that turnaround. We're like, all right, he got his friends killed, but I can forgive him. Because if you don't forgive him, the movie, I don't know if that ending works.
So I do agree with you, on that. However, it's not our job to forgive him, it's Alex's. Because Alex is the one who's reckoning with the fact that his granddad may have done something terrible. But then by the end, it's like, well, he's done something which he regrets, but he's not done something for which Alex really needs to forgive him. If anything, the forgiveness is, oh, because of the choices you made, I didn't really know who I was. So now my past is illuminated. But it's not something that he has to forgive his grandfather for. There would have been more emotional weight had the grandfather come clean to Alex at the end afterwards about what he had done and said, this was terrible. Because he talks about the terrible past, right? He talks about how anti-Semitic Ukraine was before the war, right? So he talks about that stuff. So there's already an element of forgiveness that Alex has to do, but then they scrub it away at the end. Like that bloodbath, literal bloodbath at the end is like a way of expunging everything. It's like, well, everything's all clean now. There's nothing more to think about. And it ends on a sort of, all this terrible shit happened, but we all remember who we are and where we came from now, so we can move forward together, which is fine. But we could have had two layers there, because all we're getting is, right, we all know our identity now.
Then it's not a happy ending. See, they need to get to the happy ending. Liev Schreiber, he was like, I'm going to do a crowd pleaser.
I know. Listen, I like the film. I am inclined to read the book because I think I would probably get something more from it.
I agree.
Did you know that this guy who we're speaking so highly of, Eugene Hutz, isn't an actor at all? He is the singer of a gypsy punk band.
Really? I saw, because I was like, what else is he in? And he didn't have any other credits. I mean, he has been in like a couple of short films, I think.
Couple of shorts.
That's it. Yeah.
I know. Incredible stuff from him. Talking about actors going to music. If that's a musician going to acting, that's a great success.
But now I must tell you more of myself. I am unequivocally tall. I do not know any women who are taller than me. The women who are taller than me are lesbians, for whom 1969 was a very momentous year. For me, America is a first-rate place. Most of all, I am beloved of American movies, muscular cars, and hip-hop music. I also dig Negroes, most of all Michael Jackson. He is a first-rate dancer, just like me.
Another thing with the book, they explain why Alex talks that way. It's because Jonathan gives him a thesaurus before he leaves Ukraine. So all of Alex's letters, which you're reading, he's using the thesaurus for the words.
That's cute. I mean, without that, you just assume that he's absorbing it from media, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. My fix for the movie, and I liked it, but my fix taking us back to the beginning. I think that you either recast Elijah Wood or you tell him to play the character of Jonathan differently, because if you make the spine of the movie the developing friendship between Alex and Jonathan. Then when you end the movie with them saying goodbye to each other, and then it's revealed that he's writing to Jonathan, it doesn't feel so one-sided. Because right now it feels one-sided because I have no real connection to Jonathan. So it only works halfway. But if they worked all the way, maybe you can also get past the hump of the grandfather side plot. Whether it's, that he was a Nazi or that he would betray his friends or that he was a Jew that renounces Judaism. That's only one element of the story, but you can keep going past that because it's really about the friendship between, a guy that was all in on being Jewish and a guy that had no idea that he was
Yeah,
Jewish.
absolutely. I mean, I say stunt casting, half joking, but it is a little bit of that. And you're right. If we have someone, we need someone who's not a name for that role, really. And you don't market it based on him. But then our American audiences, even indie audiences, going to see the film about the Ukrainian guy with the funny accent going on a journey. I don't know. So I can't hold it against Liev for doing what he's doing. And this is also a very personal project for Liev Schreiber. So apparently his grandparents also came from Ukraine. They were Ukrainian Jews as well.
Oh.
So this is very personal for him. And also, this is fascinating. That's big climactic scene at the Sunflower House, if you want to call it that. They were shooting in Czech Republic. There were no farmers that were willing to let them shoot in their sunflower fields, obviously. And sunflower only bloom for like a week and a half and then they're gone, like at their prime, and then they're gone. So Liev and his team, they planted a patch, right, at the right time of year so that they would know exactly when those sunflowers would bloom. And then they built the house in the sunflower patch. And then they knew when it had that week and a half of full bloom, that was when they were going to have to shoot the house scenes. But not only that, sunflowers follow the sun. So they had to work out in advance exactly where the sun was going to be. So they knew where to build the house and then where the cameras were going to be. Because as they were filming, the sunflowers were going to keep turning. And I thought, do you know what? That's one of the most interesting things about the movie, because that behind the scenes little nugget is incredible. Like the love and passion that would have gone into doing that. It's fascinating. I wouldn't have even thought of that. To be honest, I thought it was CGI. I didn't think you could accomplish that because it was so pristine. It's a very striking image, and it's no coincidence that they put that on the promotional stuff.
Yeah, but that's why Liev Schreiber hasn't directed another movie since. It's like, I'm done.
I'm done. I can't be messing around with this anymore. One scene I wanted to talk to you about in the middle of the film, because I genuinely have questions. When Alex gets out of the car, they stop and there's some workmen that are doing some building. He goes over to them, Jonathan goes with him, and the workmen they laugh at Alex, and Alex gets mad at Jonathan and he hits him and he hits the dog. Oh, well, maybe he doesn't hit Jonathan. He shouts at Jonathan and then he hits Sammy Davis Jr. And the grandfather comes rushing out of the car and smashes Alex around the head, slaps him. Angry. What was it in that scene that everyone was so upset about?
See, that's the, I think if you like animals, like the fact that he struck the dog, it's enough to justify it, because that was my main thing.
I mean, I agree. Don't get me wrong. I'm not encouraging the beating of the dog.
Well, no, I was actually glad, because I felt like it's silly, like, the little things that can trigger us. But he hit that dog, and I turned on the characters so quickly.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. Yeah, 100%.
But then the grandfather comes running and hits him, and then I was okay again, because it wasn't so much the character but the movie. I was like, okay, so there's a movie where a guy's going to strike a dog. There needs to be a follow-up, and there was. Yeah, right, so then I was okay. Yeah. But that's like, tactical stuff. Like character stuff, I think that, I mean, obviously I don't have, and I don't think you do either, like, like the full socio-political like grasp of like, what does it mean that they're laughing at the guy he's from Odessa, right?
He's from Odessa, yeah.
Right. But obviously there was some social issue going on there where he's already intimidated by the fact that these guys, he knows that they think less of him already. And he's trying to get in and out as quickly as possible. And Jonathan can't help himself, and he makes the interaction more complex to where it just opens Alex to to embarrassment, exactly what he was trying to avoid. And then he lashes out as Jonathan, who wouldn't have known. Like, there was no way for him to know that this was really going on. So it just felt a lot of like people acting. And obviously, the grandfather is stressed out by other things, by the memories that all this is dredging up.
Yeah,
so
sure.
it's just an avenue for him to explode. Oh, you just hit my dog. Now I'm just going to lash out.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what it felt to me. I was like, oh, there's a lot of people exploding for different reasons. You know, they're using this as an excuse to vent.
Yeah, you're right. That is what it is. Exactly. That is what it is. Incidentally, I paused the movie at one point. I was watching it on Amazon Prime, and the casting came up, and the dog was called Mouse, who played that dog. But then I think I had to pause it again later, and it said Mickey. And I thought, that's very cute. They've got two dogs, one called Mickey, one called Mouse. That's very cute for Sammy Davis Jr. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the characters. It lost something for me, sadly, at the very end. But I'm glad that it didn't for you. And I guess you would you would say that this, despite not being like a particularly impressive Elijah Wood performance, it's a good addition to his filmography.
Right. I mean, if you might get to it because of Elijah Wood, and then maybe the Elijah Wood performance is not what you remember after watching it, but that's okay. He still watched a movie that had some weight, that had something to say.
I've got some closing comments from Elijah himself on the film, a few comments on the film. So he said, in terms of how we got involved, the script was sent to me and I fell in love with it. I love the story and I love the characters. They're so colourful. I also love the character of Jonathan. It was so different from anything I'd done before. Not Sin City, though. After reading the script, I met with Liev, and it was funny because directing was a relatively new thing for him to do, to go to hotels and meet actors for a film. So we immediately became very comfortable with each other because all pretense was set aside, which I can imagine very much. And I've got to say, we didn't really say it, I do think it's a great debut / one-off from Liev. I mean, it's incredible. He's very comfortable and confident behind the camera. I think it's great. The scene where we're introduced to Alex and his family around that table and the cuts away, that's a confident director. I was impressed with what he did there.
Especially because it's so different from everything that came before. Because before you're introduced to Jonathan and it's very quiet. It sets you up for a very different kind of movie. And then you go to Alex and it's a full-on comedy, and the visual style changes, the voiceover, the language, everything. And the fact that it's not... Because that could have been a red flag, but it wasn't. I was just like, oh, it's done so well, and it was making me laugh. And I think that it does a good job of telling you, you're going to see both sides. You're going to have the really wild, funny road trip comedy, but you're also going to have the very introspective, journey of a man reconnecting with his roots. It's great. I didn't know that he was a director until the credits came up, and I'm like, that Liev Schreiber? Really?
Oh, you didn't know that before you picked
know.
it? Oh, I thought you knew. Oh, wow. Yeah. There you go.
No idea.
Cotton weary, folks. Cotton weary. And also on his look, when he was asked how he came up with it, he said the look came out of practicality. The character is very practical, so the idea that he would wear the same suit every day makes a lot of sense. The glasses were a stylistic choice, particularly the magnification. I do have to say, seeing him in the car, what he was driving, that he was in the back seat while they were driving, and there was a shot through his glasses, I'm like, this is impressive, because that's actually lenses in those glasses. So often they put the clear ones through, but it was so distorted. That was like a thick lens in there. And he said the thing about Jonathan is he's an observer, so it accentuates that one quality. Jonathan is also the sort of person that doesn't really fit anywhere, so the glasses and the fact that they are so magnified, it kind of keeps him separate from the rest of the world. Unfortunately, probably from the audience as well. Sadly, which I can get that. I can get that Jonathan is a collector and an observer, so everyone else is due to act around. I guess it works. I think it works better in a book.
That's the catch. Is the problem with when you're having that type of character in a movie. If you have them be the lead or the co-lead, you are handicapping yourself, because even if that's a accurate representation of who Jonathan is in real life, you have to dramatize it in a movie, and I think they only get halfway there here. Just again, like I said, they have the Alex character to kind of carry it and save you. But can you imagine if it was this, but without the Alex character, you wouldn't be able to have a full movie with Jonathan the way he is.
That would be a struggle. Yeah, it would be incredibly dry. That's it. We needed Elijah. In many ways, Elijah was the Samwise Gamgee of this film, carrying the load with Alex so that Alex could get to the end. Alex is our hero.
I just really feel the need to make a connection.
Well, Miles, I think you've made a connection. It just seems a little bit extreme, though, you know?
Just like Jonathan, Alex, Grandad, and Sammy Davis Jr., we've come to the end of our journey together, sadly. But we have to draw some conclusions first. As you know, we have to make a Crane connection. And hopefully you've done your research, Julio, on what this section is, because this is the part of the show where we try to link... You're going to have to do this as well, by the way, not me. So power to you. We have to try to link everything back to the episode of Frasier we just watched, specifically where we try to link Elijah Wood's IQ-obsessed Ethan to Elijah Wood's passive and mute-like Jonathan in Everything Is Illuminated. You get the honor. This is undoubtedly the hardest connection I can imagine making on Frasier so far.
Is it?
Okay, go ahead. You got the floor.
Well, I'm not saying there's going to be a pleasant connection, but I think it's just, you can kind of draw a straight line. He's like a really smart, extroverted kid ahead of his time, right? Like and something happens, he mouthed off to the wrong person. There's something, obviously a big event that happens in his life that turns him into Jonathan. Like you have somebody that was so there's a tragedy of sorts that really stunted his development socially. So that's really sad, but it's also the most likely thing to happen. You have like a kid that seems very bright, seems very outspoken whenever somebody like an adult is being unfair to him or unimpressive, and he just mouthed it off to the wrong person, and that must have taken to some humiliating place, something that just turn him into Jonathan. It's sad, actually.
Bless you, Julio. I wouldn't have got there without you. Yes, you're right. That's exactly it. That is the Crane connection. I don't like to touch victims of the Holocaust with a callous Crane connection, but you did it in the most honorable way that you could.
Well, now you have to read one of his books and see who is Frasier, like which character is inspired by his early interaction with Frasier Crane, because that has to come up at some point.
Listen, if years of Seinfeld and Woody Allen watching have taught me anything, almost every Jewish American has a psychiatrist, so I'm positive there will be a Frasier in there somewhere. Julio, thank you. So I suppose this is the end, and I'm off to draw myself a bath. Time to say goodbye to Frasier and Martin's opposing views of the sanctity of sex. Goodbye to Ethan as he got his door busted down and his head beaten in by his schoolyard bullies. Goodbye to Jonathan, his thick rimmed glasses and Ziploc condoms. Goodbye to Elijah Woods, who I'm sure is busy DJing at an all-night pizza-themed horror movie marathon festival somewhere in Austin. And finally, to our dear friend Julio, who has made today's journey infinitely more fun and enjoyable than I could have done alone. Julio, we already spoke about Contrarians, but where can the listeners find you? How can they get in touch?
Just look up the Contrarians on your podcatchers. If you want to check the website, it's wearethecontrarians.com. That has links to all our stuff. We're on YouTube too, Contrarian Prime on social media. Don't look for us on X, just do Blue Sky or Threads. We're trying. We're doing our best.
I would plug your recent episodes, but by the time this comes out, we're going to be a few months down the line. So I don't know what you'll have going on. What I suspect you might be at the end of is your tough analysis. But I don't want to timestamp this episode because it might be well out of sync. So yes, thank you once again, Julio. That was genuinely a pleasure, delightful. You started this off by saying we do nice short episodes. This was not one of them. But
it was a good conversation. That's all that matters.
Exactly. 2 hours of having that conversation with myself is not interesting for anyone. So thank you very, very much. I hope you will be back at some point in the future. If I can tantalize you with another guest, we'll bring you back for season 3 or something like that.
Anytime.
Excellent. So, as always, thank you to you, dear listeners, also for liking, subscribing, sharing, all that good stuff. You can stay up to date by searching for Frasier on Film, on podcatchers, whatever, and you won't miss a single episode. You can connect with me on Frasier on Film on all the social media platforms. Like Julio, you won't find me on X. And if you've enjoyed today's first-rate premium journey on this Frasier Heritage Tour, you might find it in your heart to leave me a 5-star rating somewhere on one of the platforms. Go ahead and make it 5 stars, please. Next week's episode sees Frasier getting whored out by his own father at a bachelor's auction in Can't Buy Me Love. We'll be going from the lofty heights of one of the most infamous actors in the world to one of the lesser-known names and faces, Ashley Banks. Ashley Banks is going to take some serious investigative work, but I'm sure you'll all agree the end result is going to be a lot of fun, particularly as the film we'll be covering is arguably her biggest role, and it is 1987's cult classic Monster Squad. Julio has left the building.